Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, J Mill, J Miller, if you like. So let's get into it. So, first thing I want to say is happy to finally be on camera for you guys. Um, this will be the format going forward. I'll mix in some other things, but yeah, let's get into it. So, today I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been happening with the Cowboys lately. So, Max Crosby finally got traded. Wasn't to the Cowboys though; it's to the Baltimore Ravens. So now we can finally put that to bed here. Um, Everybody kind of wanted to see him as a part of the Dallas Cowboys. I kind of had some questions as far as fit, but then when I went to go back and take a look at it a little bit more, I realized he's probably going to be playing nickel 75 to 80% of the time. So the whole stand up outside linebacker situation in a 3-4, as far as having to drop into coverage or, blitzing off the edge, kind of reading things a little bit, kind of a moot point because if he's going to be putting his hand in the dirt 75 to 80% of the time and only doing that 3-4 stand up outside linebacker stuff, on basically first down or obvious running situations, it's a little bit different than kind of doing that full time. So the more I started to think about it, the more I started to talk myself into the fact that he might actually be a good fit for the Dallas Cowboys. But then the Ravens came in, swooped right in, said, we're going to give you 2 first-round picks. I did not want the Cowboys giving up 2 first-round picks for Max Crosby, no matter how good of a player he was. So I'm glad that somebody else, was a hero in this situation. And we'll just see how it plays out moving forward. The Cowboys have plenty of edge options in free agency. If they want a big ticket edge, they can go after Trey Hendrickson. There's also some other players that are going to be out there that they can take a look at, as well as the draft. So it's not the end of the world. It's just, hey, now we can at least move on to the next phase in the news cycle. So speaking of moving on, a couple of other things happened. The Cowboys moved on from Brock Hoffman, which was kind of interesting. They tendered TJ Bass with, I believe, a second round tender, which is worth about 5.825 million. But they let Brock Hoffman walk. Now Hoffman has always been a pretty decent fill-in at the center position and actually a little bit as well for the guard position for the Cowboys. So Hoffman each year has had to kind of play a little bit of a role. Depending on what happens with the team, there's always somebody that goes down. Hoffman usually steps in, plays well for a handful of games, and then that other guy comes back, and we kind of just do our thing and keep moving from there. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of market Hoffman has because a lot of teams are offensive line starved. So I imagine he's going to command at least some interest when free agency starts. Maybe a handful of teams here and get a chance to actually either compete for a starting job or win a starting job, which is more than he was going to get with the Cowboys with Cooper Beebe being here. So, see you later, Brock Hoffman. I loved you. I loved your attitude. He played with some tenacity. He was very like he's one of those guys that was always going to mix it up with the other team. So if it was time to get into a scrap or if somebody laid a smidge late of a hit on Dak Prescott, you could always count on Brock Hoffman kind of being the first into the scuffle, starting it up and then kind of walking away and letting everybody, kind of have at it there and act like he didn't do anything at all. So it'll be very interesting to see how he plays with other teams because one of the knocks on Brock Hoffman is the further he plays, the more he plays, the less effective he becomes. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the strongest guy, but he's very technique sound. Like I said, he plays with a ton of tenacity. He does set a tone for your offense. So some teams out there will definitely be looking for that. A lot of teams definitely need that. I'm not saying the Cowboys didn't need that, but they have their starting five. Honestly, they have TJ Bass, they have Nate Thomas, and then Brock Hoffman. So you basically, I mean, Nate Thomas and TJ Bass could start for a lot of other teams in the league. So can Brock Hoffman. So you had basically 3 backup offensive linemen that were starting quality. Now you have 2. So you're going into the year with pretty much your 7 guys known, and then you'll probably add a late round draft pick. And then you have Sadiq Charles from last year. You have Rob Jones from last year. So you have a couple of other guys on the roster who can compete for that Brock Hoffman spot and then kind of move forward for there. So it's not the worst loss. TJ Bass getting 5.8 million probably put the writing on the wall because you're not going to have 2 backup offensive linemen making over $5 million, especially with a lot of the defensive needs what the Cowboys have going into free agency. You don't want to tie up that much money on offense and then try to go. I mean, shit, try up that much money on offense. The Cowboys already have a crap load of money tied up on offense. So now you don't want to tie an additional $10 million up on offense, knowing that you're still going to have to pay George Pickens. You're still going to go find guys in free agency, hopefully, to help solidify the defense as well as bringing in your draft picks as well. So, you know, TJ Bass making his money, doing his thing. Brock Hoffman, see you later. And then the third one, Brandon Aubrey. Now, this whole thing is getting a little bit out of hand because Brandon Aubrey's, team is asking for $10 million. I get you, Cowboys Nation. I get you, Brandon Aubrey. Like, I love the guy. I love the guy. He's one of my favorite players on the team. He's very consistent, right? He kicks the ball well. He can kick it from 60, 65. I think he can make it from 70. And the Cowboys do tend to lean on Brandon Aubrey quite a bit when it comes to games. He's good at the kickoff thing. He's good at putting it in the landing zone. Former soccer player, so he's effortless when he does it. Very businesslike when he comes out to kick his field goals. If they're extra points, if they're to send the game to overtime, if they're to win the game. I mean, Brandon Aubrey is one of the most reliable kickers you have. He's very, very consistent, and I like his demeanor, right? Not $10 million. I like his demeanor. I don't want to pay $10 million for his demeanor. If you know what I'm saying? So the Cowboys are probably looking to make him the highest paid kicker in NFL history. So you're talking, six and a half, 6.6 million. His team's obviously not going to accept that. He has the same agent that negotiated Dak Prescott's deal, and that guy asked for 40 million the first time, and the Cowboys are like, and then when the time came, they paid him 40 million. And then his team asked for 60 million the second time, and the Cowboys are like, and then when the time came, paid 60 million. So I mean, I don't think the Cowboys are going to cave this time. And if they did, I'd be highly disappointed if they caved and actually paid this guy $10 million. I'd say, hey, man, go hit the open market. We love you, guy, but I'm not going to pay you $10 million. So see you on another team. And I'm sorry, And because they gave him the second round tender, the Cowboys would actually receive a second round pick if he left and another team signed him and he went to that team. So I'm like, hey, man, with the needs we have on defense, and the draft coming up and some of the depth being in that second, third, and fourth round, I'd like to have a second round pick. Cowboys have a fourth round pick. They don't have a third round pick. I'd like to have a second round pick. So if Brandon Aubrey's got to hit the street and get his money and the Cowboys get a second round pick in return, I'm completely okay with that. But if he ends up staying and he signs for like 7.5 million, even 8 million, I could stomach that. But I mean, Javonte Williams is making $8 million as a running back, and I know running backs are devalued, but freaking a kicker, bro, a kicker, 8 million, 7.5 million. But if the Cowboys do it, I'll be like, okay, Brandon Aubrey's back. We paid him a lot of money. He's here now, and we don't have to worry about that part of our team. But if he were to walk and we were to get the second round pick, I'd be totally okay with that because there's going to be tons of kickers out on the street. The Cowboys can go find other kickers the same way they went and found Brandon Aubrey. They can go find another kicker. So I wouldn't freak out if for some reason the Cowboys are like, sorry, and Brandon Aubrey ends up walking, but they tendered him second round tender. I don't think another team's going to give a second round pick for a kicker. So I think he's going to make 5.8 million this year, unless his team decides to come way down. But even if I'm the Cowboys, I'm like, screw that. Why would I sign that deal? I can probably make the cap number a little lower in the first year. If you sign that deal for 7.5 million, I can give you a big sign-in bonus and make your salary this year basically league minimum. But then next year, I'm still going to get hit with that cap hit, and then the year after that. So it's a slippery slope. And if I'm the Cowboys with all the needs you have this year, unless he's going to agree to your number and you can lower that cap hit a lot, letting him play this year at 5.8 million, that's fine. It's a no-brainer. And now you can move on to some of the other things that your team actually needs. And so the other thing I want to talk about today, and the last thing I want to get to, is the combine kind of changing the landing trajectory for some of these first round picks, right? When we were going through and we were looking at some of the guys like Avion Terrell and Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs and Ruben Bain, and we did breakdowns on a lot of these different draft picks for the last few weeks, and now that the combine has come and gone, you've seen some of the stock really rise for some of these guys. Dylan Thieneman, and one of the guys we talked about. Once he ran that 4.36, everybody's like, oh my God, Thieneman's moving up. I think he's going to move up. Don't get me wrong. I think he helped his stock a little bit. But when you saw Dylan Thieneman on tape, he looked fast, right? There was one of the plays where I talked about where he took a false step to the wrong side of the play once the ball was snapped, and then still had the speed to recover and get back to the other side of the field. and make the play on the ball, right? So when I looked at the film, I saw Dylan Thieneman as a fast guy. I didn't know he was 4.36 fast, but I didn't look at the film and go, oh, this guy's slow. Same thing with Sonny Styles, right? One of the things I talked about was I didn't know if he was strong enough to hold up as a middle linebacker. I didn't question his speed. I questioned his power. I questioned whether he would get moved out of the middle of the defense, right? If he's going to play middle linebacker, that's why at first when I looked at him, I said, hey, his destiny is an off ball linebacker in the NFL. Then I started looking at some of the other guys that I thought were middle linebackers and realized they were smaller than Sonny Styles. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should change my tune because, if Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas can be a middle linebacker at 6'3", 235 pounds, then of course, Styles can be a middle linebacker at 6'4", 6'5", 240 to 245 pounds. And then he ran a 4.46. And everybody's like, man, he's not going to make it outside of the top 5, top 7. But then you start to hear some of the buzz starting to come out now since we've gotten, about a week, removed from the combine. And teams are starting to say, hey, man, we still see him as being drafted in the first round, but we don't see that he actually moved himself into the top 5, into the top 4. Now, one of the things we need to remember is this is what we call lying season, right? The time after the combine all the way up to draft day, teams are going to lie. They're going to lie their ass off. They're going to tell you they don't like this guy or that we really like this guy or we're going to, kind of make these moves. What you need to pay attention to during this time of year, and especially Cowboys specifically, you need to pay attention to what they do in free agency, who they release, who they sign, the quality of player they sign, and that'll let you know a little bit more what they plan to do once the draft comes around, right? The Cowboys go out and they sign some edges who are high quality, and they sign some linebackers who are high quality, and they sign a couple of high quality safeties. It kind of leaves them open to say, hey, whoever the best player available is, we're going to draft at that spot. But if the Cowboys go into free agency and let's say they sign high quality edge and that's where they attack, and let's say they attack corner, but they leave safety and linebacker open. Well, now you can kind of deduce, hey, when the draft comes around, because they left those spots open, more than likely they're going to try to fill those through the draft. Now, the problem with the Cowboys is in years past, they've been a money 5 position drafting team, right? And the money 5 position is you're drafting tackles, you're drafting corners, you're drafting receivers, you're drafting edges, and you're drafting quarterbacks, right? You're not spending early round draft picks on running backs. You're not spending early picks on linebackers. You're not spending early picks on guards, right? You're going for positions that cost a lot when you go into free agency to try to replace some of those positions. So you draft those guys young because you're looking to get a cost savings, assuming that you hit on the player, right? This year, everything's out the window because we have a new regime on defense. The Cowboys are moving a little bit differently this offseason. So they could theoretically do something a little bit different when it comes to drafting non-money 5 positions, but spending money on money 5 positions in free agency. So, the rule book of the Cowboys in years past tells you that's not happening. This year, who knows, man? So it's going to be interesting to see. And we'll keep an eye on that news as it goes. But yeah, this is pretty much the format we're going to have going forward. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. You can hit me up on Twitter at JMillerIYL. That's JMiller if you like. You can also hit me up at knockersonthebottom at outlook.com, knockersonthebottom at gmail.com. Any questions, any comments you have, you can leave them below. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Until next time, I'm your host, J Miller if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.